This meeting is being recorded.
All right, my friends. We find ourselves on Mem Beis Amud Aleph on 42a. And do you know why tonight, God willing, will be a special night?
Honor lock at the end.
Exactly. So Paul
What?
turns to the next Amud, and our plan for this evening is to finish the third parak, which really takes us. It's not just simply three out of five prakim, but it's well over, I think, two-thirds of the Masechta at that point, or someone can calculate it for me. We're like we're in the final. We're gonna hit the final stretch soon. Okay, so I think I hear Layla, by the way. Okay. All right. So we find ourselves about one, two, three, four, five, 6 lines from the top. We're at the words Amar Rav Huna. So a little bit of Chazara, a little bit of review from last time is in order. What we learned last time was we basically elaborated on Rabbi Yossi's opinion in the Mishnah which said that if somebody carries their lulav through Rosh Hashanah, through a public domain, when Yom Tov, when the first day of Sukkot and Shabbos coincide, they will not be held accountable. Generally, when you inadvertently violate Shabbos, b'shogeg, you have to bring a carbon chatas. Okay? But when it comes to inadvertently sinning on Shabbos because you were doing a dvar mitzvah, you were trying to do a mitzvah, so then you don't even have to bring a carbon for it. You are off the hook. So in our case, where someone was carrying the lulav in order to be yotzi the mitzvah of natilas lulav, we said that he would be exempt from having to bring a carbon to atone for inadvertently violating the prohibition of otsav, transferring and carrying on Shabbos. That's where we left off. The Gemara picks up on that discussion. So here we go. Amar Avuna. Omer Hay Rabbi Yossi. Olas ha'of shenimtzeis bein agfayim. If I find an olas oaf, so a bird offering that was supposed to be an ola, fully consumed by the altar, I am not supposed to eat it. And basically there was like a bunch of other birds that were, slaughtered over there. Ukisavur chatas ofi, and I thought it was a chatas offering. A chatas offering, the Kohen is entitled to certain, not just entitled. We learned in Sefer Chinuch recently. There's an obligation for the Kohanim to eat from the carbon chatas, and that's part of the kapara of the atonement process. There's like Torah Mada moments. It's like a Torah moment, right? We just made a nice connection over there. So va'achla, and then he eats this, thinking that he's not just allowed to, but supposed to. Pater, my kamash malan. So the question is, what does this teach us? The tab dvar mitzvah, a pater, hainu hach. So the issue here is that, oh wow, what is happening with is my video messing up on your end also?
Yes,
Oh wow, this is very weird. All right. Hopefully, let me just see if it goes back on. If not.
it did.
Okay, good. Okay, very good. If not, then I'll pull an Irwin for. No, I'm kidding. I don't want to mess with you too much, Irwin. I'm sorry. But okay, you see me. Good. So the issue is, what's the chiddush over here? I had a Mishnah already, and the Mishnah already told me that if you inadvertently sin while trying to perform a mitzvah, you are pater. So what is Rav Huna and Amora years later coming to add over here to what I already know from the Mishnah? Right? Same idea. I I was trying to do a mitzvah of eating from a carbon chatas, and I inadvertently ate from a carbon ola. And I'm not held accountable. What's the chiddush? I already know this principle years earlier from the Mishnah about inadvertently carrying a lulav through Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. So here's the Havamina. Ma l'tema hasa hudita b'dvar mitzvah pater hainu ta'avan mitzvah. In the Mishnah, you actually did a mitzvah. In the end of the day, you took the lulav and you were yotze natilas lulav. Um, Albeit you performed a sin on the way to performing the mitzvah, but the sin actually enabled you to perform the mitzvah in the end of the day. Avlahacha The ta b'dvar mitzvah v'lo avad mitzvah emalo. But here, you didn't even do a mitzvah in the end of the day. You ate from a carbon ola. There was no mitzvah accomplished. So I might think when you don't actually accomplish a mitzvah in the end of the day, that's not called doing a mitzvah. Kamash Malan, and that's what Rav Huna is coming to teach us. Even if you did not objectively perform a mitzvah, but you are under the impression you were doing it for the sake of a mitzvah, and it was done inadvertently, you will be exempt from any repercussions. Very good. Now, if you glance at Tosfos right across from it, Dibur Maskal Maditema, in the middle of Tosos there's actually a different girsa, Tosos tells us. It says, the is svarm de garsi, there's some svarm that have the following text. Ma'udutema hani mili mitzvah de rami aleha. Aval mitzvah de lo rami aleha emo lo. The distinction isn't whether I performed a mitzvah or I did not perform a mitzvah in the end of the day. The distinction is whether the mitzvah is incumbent upon me or upon the general populace. When it comes to lulav, right, I can't outsource the mitzvah of davening to someone else. I, Moshe Kurtz, need to daven for Moshe Kurtz's obligation. So same thing for a lulav. I can't outsource the mitzvah of lulav to somebody else. So I need to do it. So maybe in a case where I need to do the mitzvah, it's incumbent upon me to perform it. Maybe that's what I learned from the Mishnah. When I'm doing a mitzvah that I have to be the guy to do it, and I inadvertently do an avera in the process, I'm exempt. But when it comes to the mitzvah of eating from a korban chatas, could have been Mr. Cohen, could have been Mr. Khan, it could have been Mr. Rappaport, it could have whatever Cohen. I'm running out Kohanim names here. But it could have been any Kohen. So it didn't have to be me. And that's the chiddush. The chiddush is that even though it's not incumbent upon me to do it, if I was trying to be involved in a mitzvah, I'm still exempt in the end of the day. Okay. Now, the Gemara is still not satisfied with this because this entire principle appears to be contradicted from the following brisa. Meisvei, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Hashochid es hatamid she'ena mavukar kilchaso b'Shabbos chayiv chatas utzar tamid acher. So an interesting quirk is that you know how we daven Shmona Esrei on Shabbos, right? And we daven Musaf on Shabbos, right? And the Shmona Esreis correspond to karbanos. They're in lieu of the karbanos. Neshama parmsifasenu. So wait a minute. That means they brought karbanos in the Beis Hamikdash, right? On Shabbos? Yes. Obligatory karbanos that needed to be brought, like the karban tamid, the karban musaf, those were brought every day, even on Shabbos. But here's the issue. What if you took something for a karban tamid, but it wasn't checked? I think Totzir says it needs to be examined at least 4 days prior to being used to ensure that it, I guess no movement, that it's proper and qualified for use. So if you neglected to take a pre-checked animal for the karban tamid, so then you have violated Shabbos. And the issue is, wait a minute. I thought we said that if you inadvertently perform an avera when trying to do a mitzvah, we don't hold it against you. But here it's saying if I inadvertently took the wrong animal for the karban tamid, then I violated Shabbos b'shogeg. But I'm in the middle of a dvar mitzvah. I'm trying to do a mitzvah, right? So why don't I get off the hook for trying to do a mitzvah? This seems to contradict the entire premise. Or is it? What's the difference over here? Amar le, barmine. Dahida itmar Allah. Here's a whole list of rabbis. Amar Shmuel bar Chitai. Amar Rav Hamnuna Saba. Amar Rav Yisrael bar Ishan. Amar Rav Huda Amar Rav. I remember when I was like, in Gemara class in like school, I was like, oh, it's amazing when they give the whole list of rabbis because then, we cover more Gemara that way. Just whatever. I remember like we had to cover Graham. Like, oh, that's like an easy one, just a bunch of names. Anyway, so there's like free mileage right there. Kagon, Sheviu Melishka She'inamuvu Karin. He took it from the storage place that was not pre-checked. What does that mean? Rashi says, Shekarov lemezidhu. This is remember we learned Makos, our first Masechta. So we talked about and right now in the Mishnayos. So we talk about negligent homicide, right? Inadvertent murder, killing. So on the one extreme, there's killing bemazed deliberately. In the middle, there's inadvertently, but quasi-negligently. And then there's like on the other extreme is just ones, completely not my fault. I took all the precautions necessary. This case over here, you did not take the precautions necessary. In fact, you were so negligent, it's not even called beshogeg. It's not called inadvertent. It's so negligent that it's karov lemazid. It's almost willing. Um, it's just so basically there is a storage room of pre-checked animals. It's not like the case where there's a bunch of different birds and they're all hanging out near the mizbeach, and you thought this was a chatas, turned out it was an ola. Okay, I made a mistake. Everything got mixed up. Here you have the pre-check chamber and the not yet pre-check chamber. So by you being so negligent as to not even look at the sign over there and get from the pre-check chamber, that's karov lamazid, and so this is no longer the case of committing an Avera B'Shogeg when trying to do a mitzvah. Yes, you are trying to do a mitzvah, but that's not B'Shogeg. This is Karov Lamezid. This is almost deliberate. That's how negligent it is. But if it were B'Shogeg, if it wasn't as blatantly, flagrantly negligent, then yeah, you would be off the hook from bringing a carbon, and it wouldn't be called a violation of Shabbos for that. That brings us to the next Mishnah. Any questions, my friends? All right. Well, the final Mishnah of the parak. Let's do it. Mekabelas isha miyad bena miyad baila. A woman can accept the lulav from her husband or from her child, from her son on Yom Tov to shake the lulav. You're going to ask, what's the chiddush over here? The Gemara is going to ask that same question. What's the chiddush? Okay, so hold on to that. Masi Russell Lemay b'Shabbos. If it was in the water prior to Shabbos, you can put it, right? Because people want to preserve, especially if there are ravos. You can put it back in the water on Shabbos. Rabbi Huda Omer, b'Shabbos machzir and b'Yom Tov mosifin. On Shabbos, you can return it. On Yom Tov, you can even add water. And a b'moed machlipin. And on Chol Moed, you're even allowed to change out and put new water in. All right. The idea behind it basically is that there's a tircha to adding in new water. So even on Yom Tov, we still don't want to actually change the water because it requires a certain level of exertion. But on Chol Moed, not only is it permissible, Rashi says it's a mitzvah to change over the water. All right. And then last point in the Mishnah, Koton hayodea l'nanea chayav b'lulav. A child from the point that they know how to shake the lulav, so then they are chayiv in getting a lulav. And that's why we got kids the chinuch sets, or the parent gives them a lulav to use. Excellent. Now to the Gemara. Pshita. What's Pshita? The first part of the Mishnah. Of course, a woman can use the lulav that her husband or child used. What's the chiddush? So the chiddush is in Hilchos Muksa. Ma d'tema hol v'isha labas chiyuvahi emelosakabo kamash malan. I would have thought Rashi explains that maybe that these things should be muksa on Shabbos, sorry, on Yantif for her. But that chiddush is that since men have an obligation to shake the lulav, it is fundamentally considered a kli. It's a usable item. It's not muksa, even for women who are not obligated technically, and therefore they can use it. Okay, so that's the chiddush of the Toby.
But we don't use we
On
don't
Yom
shake.
Tov, on Yom Tov.
No. Oh, this is strictly Yontif, not Yontif and Shabbos.
Yeah, this is Yom Tov.
Oh, okay.
All right. I mean, but we learned last week that back in the days of the Beis Hamikdash, on the first day they did it on Shabbos. That's how you have the case of someone walking through Rosh Hashanah with it on Shabbos. The Mishnah explained they would come to shul beforehand and they'd bring their lulavim over on Friday. I know what's happening in my voice, by the way. That way, that way they can have it there and not carry it on Shabbos. Nowadays, post Beis Hamikdash, we don't do any of it. All right. I hope this I have to get a 10:30 share on Shabbos, so hopefully this doesn't carry over. All right. Going forward. Katan hayodea lenanea. So a child from the time he knows how to swing the lulav and shake it, he's chayiv in it. Tan Rabbanan. Katan hayodea lenanea chayiv belulav. So a child from the time he knows how to shake the lulav, he's chayiv to start using a lulav. Lesatef, he knows how to wrap himself in a garment. Oh, thank you so much. Um, Lisatev, oh, that was much better. Lisatev chay betzitzis. When he knows how to wrap himself in a garment, he's chayv in tzitzis. Lishmor tefillin, when he knows how to properly take care of his tefillin. Aviv lokeach lo tefillin. His father purchases tefillin for him. Yodeh ledaber, once he knows how to speak. Aviv malabdo Torah o kriya shema. His father should teach him Torah and kriya shema. Now, shkoyach, Torah is very broad. What do we mean by Torah? It's much more circumscribed. Torah Mahi, Amrav Hamnuna, Torah Tzival and Moshe, Rosh Kilas Yaakov. We start singing Torah, 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 right? So it's not just like a nice song to sing, but actually that's one of the first things you were supposed to teach a kid. Um, so the right, so it's funny. I remember when I was a kid growing up, I would go Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, but I have a twin brother Benji, and I didn't want him to feel left out. So my parents would sing Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe and Benji, and now Talia likes to sing that. So pass the Masara on. Anyway, Kriya Shema Maihi. What's Kriya Shema refer to? Pasuk Rishon, the first pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Obviously, we teach them more than that, but that's the starting point. Going forward, Hayodea Lishmor Gufo, one who knows how to protect his body from becoming Tameh, Ochlin al Gufo Taharos. If his body came in contact with Taharos, things that you want to keep away from, you can still eat them. You could trust that he was not Tameh when he came in contact. Lishmor Yadav, if he knows how to protect his hands from becoming dirty, I mean from Tuma, he washes them. So then, Ochel Yadav Taharos. You can eat Taharos that came in contact with them. Hayodeli Sha'el, one who is aware enough that you can ask him whether he was Tameh and came in contact with the food. So if he answers you and says, I don't know, the rule is that if you have a suffix, a doubt, whether something is tameh or not in Rishus HaYachid, in a private domain, then we err on the side of rendering it tameh. Rishus HaRabim tzveiko tahor. And if it's in Rishus HaRabim, in a public area, we assume by default that it is tahor. Hayodea lifros, kapav. Now, and once a child, and by child we mean he's basic. So this is interesting, actually. Things shifted a little bit over time, it would seem, but originally you only started doing duchening once you were bar mitzvah. So, hayodea lifros kapav, one who knows how to duchen, chol kilo truma bebeis hagranos. We will give him truma even at the threshing floor area. Rashi explains that for certain people who may have not had that level of awareness, but knew how to keep the laws of Tahara, they would send it to their house. But the point here is Mishiodea Lifros Kapav Uporis Bitsibor, Rashi says, that one who knows how to duchen already and can do it at shul, Hakol Yodim Shehevi Shtei Saros Shein Katan Poris Kapav. So by the fact that he's going up there to duchen, everyone can infer, he must have matured already. He's a full bar mitzvah, and that way he can get it at the Beis Hagranos. Going forward, turning to Man Beis and Beis, Hayodea Lishchot, one who knows how to shecht, meaning he can, even though he's not an expert, but he knows how to slaughter, he has the technique down pat, Ochle Mishchitaso. You can eat from his shechita, even though he's not a bucky, he's not an expert in all of the laws of trefos. this we're talking about a kid right now, actually. Amar Rav Huna, Hushagado Omid al Gabav. But this is provided that there is adult supervision who is guiding him. Interesting point here, by the way. I should have prepared this, but in the Sefer Mega Givos Olam from Rav Michal Shurkin, he's a he's a Roshi technically, but he's a big Talmud Chacham in Eretz Yisrael. So he is a somehow related to Moshe Feinstein. He has stories about him. So I was preparing those for all the purposes of my teaching. So the funny thing is, as much as Ramosha was a by the books halacha person, he didn't like doing any fancy maneuvers. He believed in the idea that the minhag was okir the halacha. That minhag sometimes is more powerful than the written word of the Sif and Shulchan Aruch. So he would actually go to, I think, the local shochet and to the local sofer, and he trusts, if they said their Masorah, they receive was to do X, Y, and Z, he would trust that over what was commonly paskind. So this idea that the shochet, even if he's not like a huge Talmud Chacham, but he trained with someone who knew what he was doing and has that Masorah, that's given a certain amount of weight in halacha, which I thought was a fascinating thing. Okay, going forward, Yachol Lachol Kizais Dagan Marchi. So again, all this is like we're talking about things related to kids, like kids reaching certain milestones and thresholds and the ramifications of that for halacha. Yachol kizayis dagan, marchikin mitzo aso umimei raglav arba amos. Once a child can eat a kizayis, an olive's worth of grain, we have to distance ourselves from their excrement and from their urine for amos. If you want to recite a bracha, you want to daven. So I mean, this is something I learned, or like when the kids are getting like the formula or the breast milk, there's a different result than once they are actually, consuming regular solids, right? Marissa, you can confirm that? Is that true? I think so. Okay, she's somewhere around here. And it starts, so that's the idea. I had to like start training myself to change diapers before they change over to real foods because then it gets even worse. Okay, sorry to get graphic on it, but this is sometimes like you see like health advice and stuff in the Gemara, and you're like, is that really true? I'm like, wait, this is actually real. This I can attest to. So I was excited about that part. Academic purposes. Anyway, Amar Achista, Pushayachol Echol Bichtei Achilas Pras. Only if he's able to consume it in a time of Kidei Achilas Pras. Basically, pras is half a loaf of bread because it's I'll give the background on it. It used to be back in the day, there wasn't breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There were two main meals. And they would bake one loaf for everyone each day. You had a pras. You had a half of it at the beginning of the day and half for your later meal during the day. And so basically in halacha, for an entire eating session to be considered part of the same session for a bracha acharona, you have to eat the bread toch kidei achilas pras. You have to have a kazayas of it within the amount of time that it would take to eat that half a loaf of bread. So I think the time ranges between 2 to 9 minutes. Like every posek and his grandma has like an opinion along the entire spectrum between I think roughly 2 to 9 minutes or so. This is important in general to know, just because if I start, this is like on Shabbos, if I just peck at my challah at the beginning and I peck at it and peck at it throughout the meal, I might not be able to recite the Birchas Hamazon on it because I didn't eat Tochdei Achilas Pras. This is relevant for Pesach night. This is perhaps where it's most famous, is that you want to eat the matzah, toch kidei achilas pras. So this is why you have people who are like shoving it down their throat. But the funny part is that people go lechumra both ways. If you, what's the logic in 2 minutes versus 9 minutes for toch kidei achilas pras? If I say it's 2 minutes, it's because I think a pras is a small amount of bread. And if I think it is a huge amount of bread, then I say 9 minutes. So the ironic part is that we're assuming kazayis is really huge, and we're assuming that a pras is really small. So I'm trying to shove like in a funnel all this matzah down my throat within 2 minutes. but it doesn't seem to make sense. You have to go l'chumer both ways. Anyway, because this is brought up, I just mentioned that. Amar Achia Barei Durav Yavo Ubegadol Afa Pi Sheni Yochel Lechol B'chtei Achilas Pras. And once someone's older, they're a gadol, they're not a kid anymore. Even if they're not able to consume it within Tochadei Achilas Pras, Chesiv v'Yosef Das Yosef Machov. Wow, I'm never going to read that pasuk the same again in Koheles. And Koheles says, when you gather knowledge, you gather more pain, right? It's like this very poignant idea. The more you learn about things, the more painful it is to learn about existence. Here it means as you become older, the excrement smells worse. Okay, that's very interesting rendering of the pasuk. Never thought about that when I read through Koheles. Yachol lechol kizayis. Okay, final point. Yachol lechol kizayis tzli shokla pesach. Once someone is able to eat an olive's worth, a volume of an olive of roasted meat, then they could be included as one of the members for the Karban Pesach. Shenemar ishlefi achlo. Once you are able to consume that much, which is a requirement, the minimum to eat from the Karban Pesach, you could be part of the Chabura for the Karban Pesach. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, well, how do we determine? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ad shiach levar achila. The standard is once he can kind of tell what is food and what is not really food. Well, how do we determine if a kid really knows what is food and what is not food? It sounds almost like the Moshe Rabbeinu with the coals and with the jewels. Ketzad nosod tzror v'zorko egos v'notlo. Basically give him a rock and then we throw a nut and we try to see, does he try eating the rock or does he try eating the nut? If he goes for a nut, that means he knows what food is. If he goes for the rock, let's hope we have like a paramedic or something on site there. Generally, we try not to hand choking hazards to children, so don't try this at home. But at any rate, Hadranalach Lulav Hagazel Mazel Tov, everyone. We've finished the third parak of Meseches Sukkah. Shkoyach. And that's on Mem Beis and Beis. We are on 42b, and I think it was a Nun Vav it goes up to, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's Nun Vav, 56. All right. I'm not going to say final stretch just yet, but someone do the quick math over here for me. What's that? 14 more? Am I counting that right? Roughly 14 more? Maybe less than 14 more. We are getting closer. So I have to calculate this out, but maybe around Pesach Shavuos time we might be finishing this. No? Someone help me figure this out over here. We do an in a week. We have about 14 blot left. 28 weeks. How about 28 weeks from now brings us to which month?
I think
Toby,
you're into this. I think you're into the summer already.
into the summer. Toby, you concur with that? It looks like you're muted.
It
Try to say
it
something.
would be June.
It'd be June. Okay. Maybe all right. So maybe if I see that we need to pick up the pace, maybe like a week or two, we'll cover a little bit more than that. All right, but we have time before we have to identify a date for the CM. How about that? Okay, don't worry, not too soon. All right, Toby, you're still
It'd be
muted.
nice if we coincided with Shavuos.
It could be nice. There you are,
Yeah,
Toby.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, Pesach will come and we won't have class probably during
Oh, we have
Pesach.
to account for all the weeks that we're not meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe we'll end up on Sukkot.
maybe.
No. Shavuos is more like it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's aim to get it done by Shuas then. So maybe I'll have to figure this out. Maybe we'll switch to trying to do a blot, a full daf some weeks. Let me see. I mean, I'll look
Why
ahead.
don't we just do, Rabbi, can I make a suggestion? Why
Yeah.
don't we just like do it by time? Like say the shear is going to be an hour or whatever, however far we can get, minimum of a daf, but or a blot, whatever, the amud. But if we have more time, we keep going till we've hit an hour. Because
Okay,
once
when
we've
people
committed
think of this
ourselves
suggestion.
to the shear, it's like, like now it's 8:47. So
Okay.
We could have gone, I mean, I don't know how anybody else feels, but I can do an hour.
All right. Well, we'll see if I don't want to pressure anyone on the spot.
No, but I'm saying if we find,
All
that's
right.
one way to
Also,
do it.
Sukkah you want to cover.
Right. All right. Let me think through. Okay. Now this is good. So our projection is it would take us to the summer. We probably want to finish a little bit before then. So, okay. Let me think over our options, but we will do something to ensure that this doesn't stretch on in perpetuity. All right. Shkoyach, everyone. Milestone finishing the third
Happy
period.
Shabbos.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Beautiful
Shabbos
Shabbos.
too, everybody.
Rabbi